Alrighty, I think we're getting live here. Audio input's looking good. Looks like Discord's up and running. Nobody on live chat, and we're talking to ourselves. Well, that's okay. Again, as I said, this is more about getting in the habit of doing things than it is about getting things done here. Now, I might do a little feedback here. Want to test something? Well, that's okay. Again, as I said, this is more about getting in the habit of doing things than it is about getting things done here. Now, I might do a little feedback here. Want to test something? Well, that's okay. Again, there we go. Alrighty. Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure that unfortunately, I've got to use like actually like 4 different programs to make sure all the sound goes to the right area. You can see why nobody else ever bothers to use Discord for this, but for me, it's actually a bit easier. So let's shrink this down here. We'll make a note that when we're done, it's about 2 minutes in is when we start. And wow, we got a lot to unpack this week. As the title suggests, we've got PewDiePie. Events with Trump's exaggerations, as well as something a bit more closer to home, as I put up in another video. Some guy down in Florida wanted to blow up the Target I go to. So, let's start at the top story, at least local news. Convicted sex offender down in Florida came up with the bright idea that he was going to hire somebody to take a number of explosives hidden in various food containers and place them on the appropriate shelves on Targets all over the East Coast, and in doing so was hoping to drive down the price of Target, which he would then buy up the stock of in hopes of making a profit when it rebounds. For me, the main issue of this is that he thought he could get away with it, and it actually is a pretty brilliant idea. I can actually see this guy blowing up a couple of Target stores, making a few phone calls, claiming ahead of time which one's going to be hit next. The bomb goes off to legitimize his manifesto, whatever he makes up, and the media looking for something to run with. Wouldn't matter if it was real or not, or just, in this case, basically a grab for money. They'd take it as far as they could in pursuing their own narrative. They would have legitimized what he did. They would have excused it in a way. They would have made it so he was unnoticeable. They would have covered it up among all the other outstanding problems that are out there. I often thought that eventually this was going to come down to somebody exploding a bomb. It didn't occur to me that there'd be somebody who came up with the idea of how to do it for profit. I thought everything that would happen would be ideologically driven, but not in this case. Right now, what we're dealing with is somebody who's, well, pure evil. Which brings up something I discussed in another video that I want to reiterate here. Somebody was telling me, oh, you're all the same, all you capitalists. And which kind of surprised me, but given every time I tried to explain everything, he just said automatically, you lie. Whatever. That's not my concern. My concern is to try to briefly summarize to you my position on things. When capitalism is very great at dealing with dollars, with numbers, with units of currency. It's very efficient, and it requires that there be a multiple competing subjects, for lack of a better term, multiple competing businesses, people, whatever. And this applies to any sort of marketplace. The problem is that at some point in history, we came up with a great idea, and I agree with it 100%, that people should not be bought and sold, that slavery is wrong. If you accept unfettered capitalism, you accept that people have a price and they can be bought and sold. Not just rented with their own consent, but they can be owned because everything has a dollar price under pure capitalism. The moment we establish that people cannot be bought and sold, we effectively put the price head on a human life. At infinity, a person is priceless, according to the belief that you can't buy and sell people. And I agree with this. Problem is that no system created can survive infinity. It simply doesn't exist in nature. It simply cannot exist in any form of government or economy. If you have infinities, your system will break down. And this is the problem with capitalism, because there are people who go, well, I can't technically treat everybody as infinitely worth infinite money. So, well, what's a few lives and a few blown up stores of Target? There's a cost benefit analysis there, and it might make me some serious cash. That's what happens when you start to take human lives and you make them part of an equation where you give them a dollar amount. This is why I believe that there's some degree of socialism necessary. Socialism, to some degree, allows you to protect people. And that's what its job is. But the problem is when we take it from protecting human lives, preventing loss of life and limb, and we move it beyond physical suffering to mental. And that's what we have today. Socialism would be great for protecting a person's life. The problem is that we have moved it on to their mental well-being. That we need to protect people from being mentally hurt, from hearing things they don't like. And that just results in creep and creep and creep until eventually the system breaks down entirely, because socialism is not good at dealing with numbers. Socialism, by its very nature, is a monopoly. And monopolies fail. Yes, you can have a dictatorship with the once and future king who is perfect in every way, but eventually that individual dies, his successor is never as good as the original, and the system breaks down. Now there, of course, as Belgian Dan has just pointed out, there are degrees. We can't practically, in real life, we sometimes have to put value on people's lives. If life is unfair, sometimes you might be forced into a situation, hypothetically, where you have to make a decision between saving one life or 10 lives. It happens. What do you do? I actually want to, at some point, get back to that as a philosophical discussion, but my point of bringing it up is here, we kind of need to stop trying to put everything into a box. Everything either is capitalism, everything is either socialism. We have to define everything. That's actually the weakness of the system. When you take away the equations and you put in a human element, the ability for people to make decisions, to have judgment calls, to say, hey, that's incredibly stupid. Maybe, we shouldn't charge the 14-year-old rape victim with child support to his rapist. I don't care what the law says. That's wrong. We don't have human judgment anymore in our system. We don't have it in our economy. We don't have it in our judicial system. And we don't have it in the enforcement division. Police are not allowed to make decisions anymore. At least in my neighborhood, I know actual cops. Every once in a while, people go, oh, the cop just pulled me over and he said, I'm sorry, I have to give you a ticket because I've started writing it. That's true. If they start writing a ticket and they don't finish it out, they can be charged with, dereliction of duty because the thought is that they took a bribe. That's nonsense. It may simply be mercy. It may simply be discovering more information. It's just a piece of paper. But the rules, at least here where I am, is that you have to finish the ticket or you'll be under investigation. We take away human agency from cops. And I do know one guy who was talking to about in his opinion of body cams. And he said, personally, I love it, but it's an incredibly stupid idea. I asked him why. And he said, because you don't know how many times I am required by law to pull my gun. And I don't do it because I don't want to shoot people. I don't want to kill people. I don't want to attack people. When you pull your gun, you take a lot of danger. Every time you pull that gun, a life is at risk. But the law requires me to draw my gun in situation X, Y, and Z. And when you've got a camera on me and I don't pull my gun, I will get written up. That's crazy. But that's what the body cam does. And the studies prove his point. They've investigated it, and shooting incidents go up when you put body cams on, but police misconduct goes down because the body cam justifies the cop followed the law. But the law has no mercy. The law has no humanity. And we've removed it. Same thing with our judicial system. There are many judges who sit there and say, I wish I could give you a lesser sentence. This is stupid, but I must. By law, you're a 3 strikes and out individual. You had 2 ounces of weed. I have to send you to jail for 30 years. You might say that's the far end of the bell curve, but as I said before, all systems break down at extremes. And you need a human element to step in and go, that's stupid. My final example is the economy. Do you know that no human being makes a decision about whether or not you get credit? You don't. Thanks to discrimination lawsuits, banks decided the best way to take care of that matter, here, at least here in America, is to remove people from the equation entirely. And computers are so easy to fool. I can get anybody a 700 credit score. And then you go and apply to banks. You could show up there dressed like a bum, heroin needle hanging out of your arm, but it doesn't matter because once you fill out that form, no human being looks at it and it gets fed into a computer and the computer makes the decision. It's not in every place, by the way, Belgian Dan. I do know it's here locally. There are rules and regulations requiring that if your subject does X, you have to draw your weapon at that time. And I don't want to give his name, but he said to me quite clearly, we often don't. We ignore stuff that people do that normally, legally, would require us to take our weapon out at that point. It's a regulation. It's not necessarily a law, and it varies from place to place. But it's kind of crazy. I mean, that in order for him to be in compliance with his rules and regulations, he has to pull his weapon. When he'd prefer not to, when he doesn't think it's necessary. And you might say, well, the rule's there for his protection. Yeah, well, it results in more shot people. But back to the economy thing. The problem is that, since we no longer are allowed to judge people and nobody is allowed to suffer shame, it's real easy to get a lot of credit and then destroy your life. Giving credit to people might sound like a great thing. Oh, let's give poor, disadvantaged people credit so they can get their lives. No, people are usually poor because they're not very good with money. It's very rare that you encounter somebody who is down on their luck, as opposed to they've been consistently down on their luck. I hate to say it. I don't want to be, that guy, but poor people are usually poor for a reason. And giving them tens of thousands of dollars is probably irresponsible. And I'm speaking from experience because as a former mortgage originator, I handed out tens of thousands of dollars because I got a penny for every dollar I handed out. Treating one group better than another, giving them the perk of extra points on the rating system so that they're more likely to get a mortgage because, well, you know, discrimination or patriarchy or whatever, it actually hurts them. It gives them money they're probably not prepared with, and in the long run, hurts them more. It's a form of racism that actually kills people with kindness. And the whole reason for bringing this up is that, like every system, if you look at it, can be exploited. And that's what this guy who wanted to bomb Target wanted to do. He saw the charged political climate. He decided the likelihood of them blaming somebody for doing this for money is low. They'll probably blame some terrorist group or organization or Black Lives Matter or white supremacists or Nazis or whatever. And in the media frenzy, the evidence will be ignored. And then I'll make out like a bandit. It's crazy. But it's a logical conclusion. As I put in my other video, which is a summary, but I'm going to repeat it here, I think that we all need to start letting go of hating the other side. We have to, even if we don't mean it, we should take the time when somebody is angry to say, I forgive you for your insults. If we all start this, even if we don't mean it and we're just saying it, it may change the dialogue. And it needs to change because the longer that this frenzied, I don't know what even to call it, madhouse, world, this illusionary, twisted funhouse world that the media is portraying, where there's a Nazi everywhere and Trump's going to kill you, or the media can't be trusted entirely. To be perfectly honest, you can't trust anybody at this point, which will bring me to topic number 2. I said a long time ago that if you brought me a lie that Trump said, I'd discuss it. And I had a couple of examples brought to me. Now, they're all trivial examples. I'm not going to go with the specific details. You can look at his latest actual press conference on C-SPAN yourself. But he got some facts wrong. And it might sound trivial. I'm the greatest. I forget exactly what it was. I had the most electoral college votes since Reagan. He was wrong. He didn't. And you might say it's a minor point. But he normally coaches a lot of things in what I call weasel words. This is why I can say often Trump doesn't normally lie, because he says, I think, I feel, I heard. He crouches everything in a subjective point of view. That time he didn't. And I think that's a bad sign. He's been playing a game. I haven't seen his latest tweet. But he's been playing a game, which he up until this point has been playing very well, but now he's getting lazy. And you can't play the game and be lazy because it's going to bite you in the ass. He has been playing the game of weasel words. He is playing the game of technical truth, which I can get behind. I've done it myself. And from a legal perspective, it's the only way to go because you can't determine what somebody else feels. You have to go by the literal written word of a law, and you should go by the literal meaning of what somebody says. And it's very, very hard to actually pin somebody down in a lie. Okay, because a lie has to be intentional, okay, as opposed to just being deceptive. Donald Trump's deceptive. Don't get me wrong. The man is deceptive. He deceives, okay? But he has never, I've searched for a lot of his stuff. He's very rarely said an actual literal truth. And the few literal lies that he said very few literal lies. And the few literal lies I've got are all on trivial matters of exaggeration. But that said, that's a dangerous precedent. Right? He prided himself on being technically true. You need to keep that up, or you will lose the people who follow you. I have a feeling that all of this is just because he's gotten pissed. It really seems like his last press conference was basically like him just being outraged, which to some degree I can understand. But then again, this is where we come back to the point where I say somebody's got to start forgiving the other side. Somebody's got to sit at the other side. You were an asshole, but I'm letting it go. You have offended me. I'm letting it go. Let's get back to discussing the issue. And then when they blow up going, what do you have to forgive me for? That right there is a win. Because if somebody can't accept you telling them I forgive you, you've won. You've just won your audience. You may not have won that person over, but your audience viewing you saying I forgive you and them going and spouting a second head that breathes fire. That is proof that you have the argument and they don't. Right now, it's just gotten ugly. It's just gotten disgusting, to be honest. There's just so much nuttiness out there. Which brings us to my final point, which I have to talk about because everybody's been talking about it. PewDiePie. Somebody came up with a great thing that I saw in somebody else's video, and I'm going to steal it right here, which he says, PewDiePie has what is known as fuck you money. I like that term. It's when you have enough money that if somebody ticks you off and you're working for them, you can go, fuck you. I don't have to work for you. PewDiePie is like over $120 million, some insane amount of money. I'm not even sure. It's definitely way up there. So even though he's lost Disney and he lost YouTube Red, the guy's operation is PewDiePie, I think his girlfriend or wife or somebody, and a couple of spray painted, I don't know, like soundboards behind him. And some weird neon glass. Yeah, PewDiePie and his bro army. I love his new one, the Hitler bro fist. I've got to start using that myself. This whole thing was nothing more than a hit piece. In my opinion, my official opinion, this was boldface because they put it in writing and in a video, libel and slander. They flat out were deceptive. They may have followed technical truths. But fortunately, in civil court, you only need to come up with 51% proof, not 95% as with criminal law. My opinion, from the time I spent working for Bronson and Migliaccio, PewDiePie has a very excellent case. And from what I remember, international courts are fairly lenient in this matter, especially lately considering some of the things Apple's been going through and pissing off the EU. PewDiePie could probably sue Wall Street Journal, and even if he doesn't win, he probably can force them into a corner where they'll offer him a settlement. But I don't think PewDiePie would want that. I think PewDiePie would go for the jugular. And yeah, in my opinion, he can reach that 51% because their video and their written word was selective, taken out of context. And here's the height of irony. The modern usage of taking quotes out of context to use for political means was actually pioneered by Nazis in their own broadsheet publications. They used a Nazi technique on PewDiePie to portray him as a Nazi. I expect irony to actually start condensing out of the air soon. As the old saying goes, you can't spell social justice warrior without, SJW, and you can't spell the initials of Wall Street Journal without SJW, so that kind of tells you something. It's just silly. All this talk about Nazis and nonsense. And to be honest, I actually have in the past dealt with real neo-Nazis. I don't think there's any actual Nazis in the United States because the neo-Nazis, while they kind of follow Nazi-esque themes, they don't really get it right. And a real Nazi would probably exterminate all these neo-Nazis. But the neo-Nazis in America are usually drug dealers and gangs. They just adopt the philosophy as a form of cult-like control. I don't understand what the obsession is with it about it, because the irony is, if you were to look at what a Nazi is, they're globalists. They wanted to rule the world. That is the definition of a globalist. What is the left these days? They're globalists. The left has actually burned books. I believe that there was a burning of Dangerous from Milo's books. That's what the Nazis did. The Nazis wanted to censor thought, wanted to censor communication, wanted to destroy free speech. And what does the left want to do? Same thing. The Nazis advocated for violence. Left is advocating for violence. It's okay to punch Nazis. The Nazis picked the richest minority that they could find to persecute, to try and take their money, which in their case was the Jews. The Jews were very rich. They were bankers. And this was, of course, because of their historical origins, where for the longest time it was unchristian to charge interest on a loan. And nobody wanted to loan money because, well, due to inflation, if you give out money at zero interest, you lose money. So the Jews were the only ones who could be bankers because they're the only ones who could, loan out money at interest. That's where the established money came from. And so what did the Nazis go after? Wanted to go after the money, after the group that everybody hates, because they're the ones on top, they're the rich ones, they're the ones who everybody's envious of because of their wealth. And what does the left go after? Rich white guys, because they've got the wealth. It's the parallels, when you actually think about it, are absolutely uncanny. In effect, even the fact, what is the Nazi party? It was the National Socialist Party. Socialism. And what is the left all about? Socialism. If anything, if there are any Nazis, it is the left. Calling them fascists and Nazis is not inaccurate. They embody all of the traits that Nazis favor. One group must be promoted over another. One group must be given benefits. Except in the Nazis' case, the Nazis simply said, the Aryans need promotion because they're better than everyone. And in the left, it's, minorities need to be raised up because they're the victims. It's a form of racism. It doesn't actually help the minorities. It hurts them. And in many ways, it does help whites. It doesn't help all whites, but it gets rid of the weak ones. I've seen it. When I was in the banking world, trust me, it was cutthroat and merciless. Only the finest rose to the top. Yes, you have a point. The privileged, if they have the right attributes, then it doesn't matter what their social standing is, they're naturally privileged. When you start defining people by traits that they can't change, that is the danger. It's okay, in my opinion, to show some amount of discrimination based on somebody's ideas. That's fine, as long as you don't go to violence. If the discussion is saying, I don't like your ideas, that's fine. But don't hate the person. You can hate the idea, but not the person. The person we must forgive. The idea we do not have to forgive. We can hate the idea, but not the person. Problem is, as I've explained in another video, and I'll summarize here, the left does not see a difference between a message and the messenger. You are one and the same. And the reason is because it is the only way to judge a message. Every individual is the same. A bum on the street is the same as the Pope. And when they make an opinionated statement, there's no way to compare it. A normal human being goes, well, when you give an opinion, I will look at your character. Well, the left can't look at somebody's character because everybody's the same. So if I say I like green and the other guy next to me says I like red, how do we compare these two concepts? Well, you look at me and you look at the other guy, and if the other guy's, you know, masturbating and murdering puppies, you might think that his opinion's a bad one. But the left has to value our opinions the same because we're exactly the same. And that's where the whole, you know, what is it? We're all just concepts. Gender is just a concept because to them, I'm not white. I am projecting a message of white. I am not male. I am projecting a message of male. And I can feel free to change that anytime I want. Anytime I want to become a black woman, I am free to. If you follow their crazy logic. And that's what causes all this confusion. They hate my message, whatever message I'm giving. Therefore, they hate me because I am my message. We must never fall into that trap. Never. That is their quagmire. That is their Achilles heel. And every time we expose that, more and more people go, wait a minute. It's possible to have an idea and still be a good person. And that's what it comes down to, really. At any rate, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about this week. Unless I have one viewer, if you want to talk about anything, feel free. You have any topics you wanted to discuss, Belgian Dan? Give you a few seconds. I know there's a time delay. By the way, I don't know if the voice chat link expired, but if you figured out how to use Discord, you could feel free to jump on and actually chat with me, because technically speaking, I'm talking through Discord right now. All right. I think this is a good place to wrap up here. If anybody else listens to this later, glad you could stop by. Hope if you disagree with me, please put so down in the comments. If you have any topics you'd like to be brought up next time, I may or may not be doing this tomorrow night. I don't know. I'm actually looking forward to the release of the Hawaii map for Unturned. I think it should be pretty interesting. And I may be losing a day or two to that. Otherwise, I am Umthoth Neverborn, the abyss that slumbers, and you have been listening to The Eldritch God.